Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shan, and I'm also a biosecurity consultant at Boffa Miskell, similar to Helen, but I work out of the Christchurch office. So we manage the control of pests and weeds over landscape scale areas in our beautiful country. We also work in the strategy, operational planning, kind of mitigation, compensation space for pest management. But today I'm going to talk to you about feral cats, which I think are still currently the enigma of our pest world in New Zealand. All right, so firstly some facts on cats. ChatGPT defines a feral cat as being born in the wild, residing in remote areas, far from human habitation, self-sufficient, and with no human contact. Now this is great, but there's obviously a little bit more to it. So yes, feral cats exist with no relationship to humans. They completely rely on themselves for food and shelter. Interestingly, the SPCA considers feral cats unsuitable for rehoming as companion animals. Now, I wonder why this isn't broadcast more loudly, because it's definitely not the vibe I tend to get from the New Zealand media. On average, feral cats have 4 to 6 kittens per litter. However, according to the Predator-Free New Zealand Trust website, feral life is brutal. Approximately 75% of kittens die younger than 6 months old. So, most importantly, feral cats do not keep rodents and rabbits in check. These pests can breed a lot faster than what feral cats can eat. We know that feral cats are skilled hunters, and this is a serious issue for our native wildlife. Obviously, our native wildlife evolved in the absence of predatory mammals. So many of our birds are flightless, they nest and roost on the ground, and they even forage on the forest floor. So this makes them easy targets. And unlike rabbits and rodents, they are typically slow breeders, so cannot replace themselves as quickly. So feral cats can effectively eat them to extinction. I'm sure I don't need to preach to you all about why feral cats are bad for our environment, but we've had some pretty sad news stories over the past year that I thought I'd share. So, over the past summer, one of the largest breeding colonies of black-fronted terns were wiped out in the space of one weekend. On the Clarence River in North Canterbury, Wildlife Management International staff were horrified to find that 87 nests that were being monitored on just one breeding island had been destroyed by a single feral tomcat. So black-fronted tern are nationally endangered, and in the space of just a couple nights, one single feral did a huge amount of damage to that population. With seasonal flooding and climate change pressure, the population has been struggling to remain stable since it was first monitored back in 2012. Predator control has been really positive for this population, but with one animal doing so much damage, it's truly devastating and has had a significant impact on the population's viability. Unfortunately, it's a similar thing for our care. The Doc Science team have identified feral cats as being a limiting factor in care survivorship in dry eastern ecosystems. So in other words, anywhere along the east of the Southern Alps, care populations are significantly impacted by feral cats. So these videos are courtesy of Wildlife Management International, so I acknowledge them. But as we can see from them, feral cats fill our top carnivore role in the environment of our invasive predator guild. So this means that, as well as predating on eggs and young chicks, they also prey upon larger juvenile and adult birds. As many of our native birds are long-lived slow breeders, the loss of breeding adults from the population can be significantly catastrophic. With feral cats having so much known impact on our native fauna, it really does beg the question, why is it still so controversial in New Zealand to be controlling feral cats? Now, as well as eating their way through our wildlife, cats play a key role as vectors in disease and parasite transmission to livestock, humans, and wildlife. Toxoplasmosis is a serious issue that costs this country millions of dollars per year. It's a disease caused by the parasite Toxoplasma gondii, and the primary host is cats. Cats spread the disease, and it can seriously harm unborn animals, causing stillbirth. So annual livestock losses of $18 million were attributed to toxo for the Hawke's Bay alone in 2014, primarily through the loss of lambs. Maui and Hector's dolphins are another victim to this parasite, where it's thought that the disposal of kitty litter down our toilet systems is transmitting the disease to the water. In humans, toxo can be life-threatening, causing inflammation of the brain, which leads to confusion, seizures, and poor coordination. It can affect a person's vision, leading to blindness, and it can ultimately lead to death. So it's a nasty disease, and one that can affect so many different animal groups. So the impacts feral cats have on our native fauna are far less understood than the impacts of the likes of stoats, rats, and possums. We all know that feral cats have an impact, but just how much of an impact is still a real question. So why are we lacking this research? There seems to be no major issue in this country with us controlling possums, rats, and stoats to protect our wildlife. If possums were a societal pet, like that picture there, would we be having this debate about them as well? The main problem, obviously, is that many New Zealanders own cute and what they perceive as harmless moggies. Unfortunately for us, cats are not out of sight and they're not out of mind. They are sitting right in our laps at night purring away. Not for me, though. Cats worldwide can be categorised into three groups: the ferals, the strays, and the pets. So stray cats are obviously those that were once owned or have previously been socialised with humans and most commonly rely on human food sources. Pet cats are fully owned, cared for, and fed by people. So interestingly, New Zealand has one of the highest rates of cat ownership in the world. According to an article published in Policy Quarterly in May this year, 41% of households in New Zealand own at least one cat, with an estimated 1.2 million companion cats believed to reside in households nationwide. Now, as well as this, the article estimated that there's approximately 200,000 stray cats and 2.4 million feral cats. Now, these numbers are probably on the conservative side because we all know that it's really hard to monitor the strays and the ferals. So a question comes to mind when we're talking about cats in New Zealand. Should we actually be referring to them as feral, stray, and domestic, or should we just actually be referring to them as the unowned and the owned? Surely nationally, we want to be controlling stray cats in and around urban areas, just as we're wanting to control feral cats in the remote areas. Now, it's not just us conservationists that have a lot to gain from effective cat control. We know the primary production sector, and potentially Māori, are heavily invested in this as well. Ultimately, we need to gain the social licence of New Zealanders to effectively control unowned cats throughout this country. We only need the majority of New Zealanders to be on board with this because, let's face it, there's always going to be a group of haters when it comes to this topic. But in order to achieve the primary goal of undertaking strategic and comprehensive control of unowned cats, we're going to require the government to sort the legal regulation of owned cats. So you may have noticed that the media has been reporting a little bit more on feral cats lately. On Monday morning this week on Breakfast, there was a really great in-depth story on why farmers are controlling feral cats. We've also seen Rakiura Stewart Island ramping up its media engagement on the impacts of feral cats as it winds up to needing to control them for meeting the aspirations of predator-free Rakiura. And interestingly, yesterday, I don't know if most of you have seen, but they found a dead stoat on Rakiura, potentially taken there as protest for what's going on. So there's a lot of media coverage on the impacts of feral cats, and the farming sector it's all simmering away in the background, which is great. But until we have the legal control over owned cats, our ability to control the unowned population will continue to just be a news story. So currently in New Zealand, an owned cat is able to roam freely without any restriction on where it goes. If a cat comes onto your property and takes a poo, we can get angry about it, but we have no legal standing to do anything about it. Unlike if a neighbour's dog came onto your property and acted out, the National Dog Control Act, implemented in 1996, would probably back you in being able to legally do something about it. So we know that owned cats are a public nuisance. They're known to defecate and spray in private gardens. They only bring home, interestingly, around 25% of what they kill. And according to current research, due to the sheer density of owned cats in urban areas, it's thought that they collectively kill 28 to 52 times more animals per square kilometre than unowned cats living in those same urban areas. So if we're unable to tell an owned cat from an unowned cat, how will we ever be able to control them effectively in our landscapes? So before we can undertake proper control, we really do need the backing of the legal system to enforce regulation of the owned pet population. So this will allow us to control unowned cats in areas of questionable cat ownership. For example, in and around industrial buildings, rubbish dumps, probably urban areas as well. It will allow for the development of control tools that probably sense microchip numbers and so therefore don't trigger that kill mechanism or don't close the door of a live capture trap. I'm not sure. The possibilities are endless. I'm not R&D, so that's not my problem at the moment. In 2021, a petition to the Environment Select Committee requested that New Zealand legislate the registration and desexing of all domestic cats via microchipping. So the purpose of this was obvious: to reduce cat populations nationwide, promote responsible pet ownership, and ultimately protect our wildlife and primary sector. Now, this was referred to Parliament and unfortunately coincided with the latest change in government. The response in 2023 was that the government acknowledged the issue, but it did not support any immediate regulatory change. Instead, they pushed this idea back onto the Predator-Free 2050 strategy review. Now, as I'm sure you're all aware, DOCS has just closed public submissions on this review. In the discussion document, it was highlighted that they do not actually propose adding feral cats to the national target list until 2030. They would rather continue to advance the understanding of and management approaches for them instead. Now, this is actually a major blow in the development of unowned cat control in New Zealand. Again, the government has dropped the ball when it comes to nationally advancing any type of cat regulation in New Zealand. Sorry, I'm pregnant and I get really dry. Interestingly, there were over 3,000 public submissions against this, asking for feral cat inclusion as a predator species going forward on that target list. Now, unfortunately, this creates a real chicken and egg scenario when it comes to gaining appropriate legal backing and that so important social licence that we need to control unowned cats. So without national support, there's no standardisation when it comes to councils developing bylaws for cat regulation. So we're seeing this currently. Out of 67 district and city councils around the country, 10 have independently implemented bylaws for the regulation of owned cats, which is great. However, without national leadership in this space, the bylaws range from simply limiting cat numbers per household to the more strict regulations around desexing and microchipping. Likewise, only 6 regional councils reference cats in their current regional pest management plans, mostly in the form of site-led programs, which obviously target high-value biodiversity sites in the regions, so they don't specifically list them as a pest species. Unfortunately, this lack of standardisation around the regulation of owned cats will impact us going forward. If we had national leadership on this issue, in the form of a National Cat Act, just like the National Dog Control Act, we would see behaviours change, probably slowly, but they would, the social licence for unowned cat control to grow, and ultimately drive forward our ability to effectively control unowned cats in our landscape, especially in those areas where ownership is questionable. So we're slowly developing tools for controlling unowned cats that are fit for purpose in New Zealand. Toxin development is being worked on in the background so that when we do get that social licence, we are ready to roll for cat control in really remote areas. So PAP, or Predator Stop, as it's registered, delivered in small meat sausages, is proving to be extremely valuable for unowned cat control, and current trials being run by DOC However, the sooner we get that social licence, the more funding we will actually be able to have allocated specifically to control tool development for cats. We have a long way to go in the trapping space, and I'm sure that many of you out there have fantastic ideas, but we're just unable to effectively develop them currently. So the inclusion of unowned cats into the predator-free 2050 strategy would definitely be a start. Without that national leadership in this space, we, collectively, need to be the drivers of change. The inclusion of unowned cats in this strategy would send a clear message to councils throughout the country and hopefully see the inclusion of unowned cats as a pest species in the next round of regional pest management plan reviews. With the inclusion in RPMPs, the ball should be well and truly rolling with a National Cat Act just around the corner. That's my hope anyway. Today I wanted to highlight this to all to you so that we can move forward as a group and make sure that we're rallying and advocating for this issue. The sooner we see change in our legislation, the sooner we will start reaching our predator-free goals. So I ask you all today to please advocate for owned cat regulation in this country. We really need to band together and make sure that we start seeing the change that we desperately need. Thank you.
Well done, Kapai. Sean? Any questions out there?
With RPMPs, you have to specify a management program. What would you recommend?
Good question.
Eradication.
Really, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. You'd probably have to start off slow and sustained control. But at least it would be a start.
Site-led. Any other questions?
No, that's great. Thanks, guys.